So for this project, I'm gonna turn this into this 6 foot tall cedar trellis. So howdy ho everybody, Rich here. So what I have here is a cedar fence post. Now these are about $3.80 at the big box store. This is a 6 foot long board. I'm gonna rip this down into 5 pieces plus whatever the scrap is. All right, I got all my cedar planks ripped down to 7/8 of an inch. Now why 7/8 of an inch? Because the saw blade itself eats up about 1/8 of an inch. The board's 5.5 inches wide. I need 5 pieces plus a 1/2 inch piece to do the cross braces. So if you cut them at 7/8 of an inch, you should come out just perfect. So I've got a whole stack of these now. I got 5 off of each board. Now with your little 1/2 inch scrap pieces, you're gonna need to cut that into 3 sections. You're gonna need a 3 foot piece, a 2 foot piece, and a 1 foot piece. That'll be your long, medium, and short brace. Now the other thing I will note is when you're selecting your lumber, try to minimize the number of knots that you get in there. So what happened with this one here, when I trimmed it off, there was a knot where the two connected and it broke. So what I ended up with is one that's too long to be the 1 foot piece and one that's too short to be the 2 foot piece. So I will end up staggering probably the braces on one of those. I'm gonna move on to assembly. I've got my 5 boards laid out. You'll notice that they're sort of a short edge and a long edge. I've got them on the narrow edge. You'll also notice that some of them naturally want to bow out. So I've got them laid where if they want to bow outwards, we're moving in that direction anyway. That'll take a little pressure off the wood. You're gonna need several things to do this piece. You're gonna need your 3 cross braces that you made. You're gonna need your 5 boards, tape measure, straight edge, some clamps, some glue. I'm also gonna recommend that you're gonna use some wood glue at each of the joints, and you're gonna wanna make sure you get the exterior grade or waterproof glue. If you don't, it will degrade over time and these things are likely to come apart, especially since they're gonna wanna naturally bow anyway. First thing I'm gonna do is 6 inches up from the bottom. I'm gonna line the bottoms up, 6 inches up from the bottom, I'm gonna draw a line. And then I'm gonna flip the boards open. I'm gonna put some glue in there and I'm gonna sandwich them together. Get them all glued. I'm gonna run some screws in there and then we'll start building the fan. So that's my glue mark. I'm gonna turn these open and I'm gonna put a bead of glue in between the first 4 and I'm gonna keep it just a little below that mark so the squeeze out doesn't go above the mark. Even that out with my finger and then we'll get these glued together. Got the glue applied. I'm gonna turn these all back up on their edge and then I'm gonna start bringing them together, making sure that my lines are lining up. Once I get them lined up, I'm going to put one of these cheap clamps on there just to get a quick hold so I can get my other clamps set properly. Now I'm going to put these pipe clamps on there for right now until I can get some screws in there. That way this is held together nice and tight. And I'm going to put one on the far end and then I'm going to put one just above the glue line. I wiped up any glue squeeze out. I'm going to turn this up on edge and I'm going to drill 2 holes, one kind of toward the top and one toward the bottom on this side, and then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to drill one right in the middle. Once I've got the holes drilled, I'm going to use my countersink bit and I'm going to countersink the head ever so slightly. And then I'm going to run a couple of outdoor grade wood screws in there to hold all this together. Now remember, when running your screws in, cedar's pretty soft, so don't go crazy. So I got my screws counterset and drilled in. Now I'm just going to clamp this to the table here on this end, and then I'm going to clamp the center board on the opposite end. That'll hold the trellis in place as I begin to flex it out. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and mark the center point of all your pieces here. You can just measure that out, put a little mark, make sure you're right in the center. So I've put a mark on the middle board 6 inches down, and I'm going to put a dab of glue below that. Then I'm going to line the center up with this, drive a brad nail, and we'll have our first part of the cross brace set. Okay, now the next thing you want to do is you want to mark in about 5 inches on your board here on each side, and that's where you're going to set those outer boards. So what you can do is lay the edge of a square on the inside of that and then run it up against this board, and you can use that to adjust this board and get that board relatively square across there, and then you can drag that out to your 5-inch mark and draw a line, and then you know that's where you're going to want to put that one. And with that square, I'll do that on same thing on the other side. Okay, now I'm going to put a little glue on that, brad nail it in. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to measure from the inside of the center piece to the outside piece, and you're going to put a mark right in the center of the board. It should be about 12 inches. It may be slightly over, slightly under, but for me it's almost exactly 12 inches. So I'm gonna put a mark 6 inches in, and that's where I know to set my next board. So I'll pull that over, I'll draw the line, same on this side, put a dab of glue, and I'll put a brad nail in. Okay, for the middle support, you're gonna come from the top and you're gonna measure down 21 inches. So I'm gonna put a mark there, and then what I'll do is I'll be able to line up the center of my board with that mark. I've already put a dab of glue on there, so I'll get that lined up. Hit that with my brad nail. Now with that in place, you're gonna wanna measure down from here and make sure that's parallel to the top row. So I'm about 14 3/4 inches there, and I'm about 14 1/2 there, which means I need to twist it just a little bit like that. All right, that looks pretty good there. I'm gonna draw my marks across, then I'll twist the board, put a dab of glue, twist it back in place, and brad nail it across. Okay, so I've got my glue on there. I'm gonna twist that in place with my marks. Now this requires a little bit of visualization and or close measuring, because you're gonna wanna make sure that your rails are about the same distance apart. If they're not perfect, that's okay, but you wanna get them close so it visually looks nice. So my middle ones look pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and hit those. And we'll check the distance real quick on those outer ones. This one I'm happy with. This one I'm gonna bring out just a little bit. Okay, so now I'm gonna set my last one. For my trellis, I'm gonna come 43 inches down, and that'll be the top of where the board goes. So as before, I've already marked my center line. So I'm gonna line that up. I'm gonna glue and set that middle one. I'm gonna do a little spacing and glue and brad the rest of it. So as before, I'm gonna use a tape measure to measure down and make sure that the rail underneath is roughly parallel to the one above. Once I'm happy with that, I'll put marks across the top. I'll rotate the board in place. I'll put a little dab of glue on each one, space it out, and then brad nail it. Okay, I've got all the trellis cross braces attached. You will experience a little bit of glue squeeze out in places. So I'm gonna clean that up real quick. And this one is done. So those of you that were paying attention, I talked about one of these boards breaking on me. So this is the trellis I built. All I had to do was just move this one down. The top and the bottom was fine. So your middle bracket is a little bit lower than the others, but I still think that came out just fine. Now, you can buy these fence pickets in 2 different types of wood pretty easily. One is usually like a treated pine, pressure treated, and then there's the cedar. I'm a fan of the cedar because it doesn't have the toxins associated with the pressure treated, but the pressure treated is a little bit cheaper. So if you're looking for something decorative or something you're gonna use in like a flower bed or some vines, I think the pressure treated would be fine. If you're gonna use this in a vegetable garden that you're gonna consume, or if you wanted to have this in the house, you definitely wanna go with the cedar. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, to all of my brothers and sisters serving in harm's way around the world, you're always in my thoughts. Be safe out there. Till next time, everybody.